Hi. So in the first video we spoke about what is repo rate and what is reverse repo rate, and we ended by mentioning about marginal standing facility and NDTL and net demand and time liabilities. So let us now take it up from here, that what is NDTL. In simple terms, for our understanding, the money which is there with the banks, our money, so which is demand and time liabilities. Our money is a liability for the bank. So demand liabilities will be current account, saving account, because we can take the money out anytime, and a time liability would be a fixed deposits or TDRs, term deposit receipts. So that is the total money which is there with the bank, and that is roughly known as NDTL, net demand and time liabilities. Now, when a bank wants some money from the RBI, let's say for example, just for discussion, if a bank has 1000 crores of NDTL, and let's say the bank goes to RBI and says it wants 500 crores in repo, then this doesn't really, this wouldn't gel, because RBI would want the amount of money which RBI can give should be somewhat in relation to the NDTL which you have got. So earlier, when the NDTL was introduced, that was the time when RBI had said, this was the time when MSF was introduced. RBI had said that only up to 2% of your NDTL would we allow under repo. So if you are, let's say 1000 crores, so 2% of 1000 crores will be 20 crores. So to the extent of this 20 crores, you can get money at the rate of repo rate. If you want money more than that, to whatever limits that RBI must have given, if you want money more than that, then you will have to pay a slightly higher rate. So here it was and this higher rate was the MSF, so marginal standing facility. So over and above the limit which RBI had said as a percentage of your NDTL, over and above that, so if a bank wanted, if such a bank wanted, let's say 25 crores, then 20% would be 20 crores would be at repo rate, and the remaining 5 crores would be at MSF. What was this essentially doing was, it was a disincentive again for the banks to just keep borrowing from RBI at whatever rate. So it was, RBI was essentially pushing the banks to maintain their liquidity as much as possible. Therefore, when the costs go up, the banks automatically try to prune their expenses and try to keep things under control. Not really expenses, but liquidity. So this was the broad meaning of MSF. So we have three important rates here: the repo rate, the repo rate, which is the blue line. The line which will always be less than the repo rate will be the reverse repo rate, and the line which will always be more than the repo rate will be the MSF. So we have marginal standing facility, repo rate, and reverse repo rate. Repo rate is the rate at which the banks can borrow from RBI to the extent of their NDTL percentage. Reverse repo is the rate at which the banks can deposit excess money to the RBI, so RBI will give them some interest, and if their borrowing is more than whatever is the limit prescribed by RBI, then they have to pay slightly higher interest rate, which is the MSF, marginal standing facility. Now, typically RBI doesn't tinker with MSF independently. Typically it can, but typically it is this repo rate which the RBI moves, and once the RBI moves the repo rate, then automatically the reverse repo rate and the MSF move. So you can see that there is this corridor which is constantly moving, except for one odd blip here and there. So let's say for example, the RBI can say that the MSF will always be 1% higher than repo rate, and the reverse repo rate will always be 1% less than the reverse repo rate. So there's a band. So let's see, for example, let's take this data. So here we have 8.25 MSF on 3rd May 2011. We come down, so on 3rd May 2011, the repo is 7.25. So 7.25 and 8.25. So there's a 1% difference. Now this 1% was what was prescribed initially, and if we go further down, then the reverse repo on that date, on 3rd May 2011, 6.25. So there's a 1% difference. This was the plan sometime. Then in between, when the governor changes, when the economic situation changes, global oblique domestic, this can change. But broadly, these are the three rates. When RBI wants to control inflation, RBI will just increase this repo rate. So we have seen this, the repo rate here, it increases. So we are in 2000. Let's take the example, this is of 2005. In 2005, the repo rate was at 6%, and from then steadily the repo rate has increased, and it's gone up to 9% over here. We can see 9% the repo rate has increased. So this was the time when inflation was going out of control, and to control and to bring it back, RBI was constantly increasing the interest rates. Again, we can see the period from 2010, sorry. So 4.75, it goes up, and it goes right up to again 8.5% by December 2011. So we also need to understand that there's not a set time frame. It's not a rule that after every 3 months or 6 months you have to reduce. So here it's taken fairly long time period to reach for the interest rates to increase, whereas here there was in a small period of time the interest rates have gone up. But whenever we see rates going up, that clearly means that RBI is of the opinion that inflation is going out of control. Inflation is my top priority. I should bring down inflation, and repo rate is the direct tool which RBI uses to, or it's an indirect way in which the RBI controls the economy. Apart from this indirect tool, which is the repo and reverse repo and MSF, we have got something known as CRR. So let us also see what is CRR. CRR stands for cash reserve ratio. This also, again, we need not by heart the levels, what is the rate. Let's say today CRR is at 4%. Was it always at 4%? No, even that can increase, 4, 5, 6. So rates keep changing. Let's not try to learn by heart what the rate is, but let's try to understand what is the meaning of each of this rate. So it's a reserve ratio. So when a bank has got 100 rupees as NDTL, then out of that 100 rupees, if CRR is 4%, then it means out of 100 rupees, 4 rupees need to be kept by the bank with the RBI. This is the money RBI keeps. This is the money the bank has to keep with the RBI. Earlier, there would be some interest which the bank would get on this, but now there is no interest. Some bankers are saying that RBI should pay some interest on that. That's a matter of discussion. But for the moment, RBI doesn't pay any interest on the CRR, that is the cash reserve ratio, 4%. So again, now if we see the charts, how the CRR has moved. CRR is this purple line. Now if we see, CRR is a direct instrument. It is known as a blunt instrument because it just puts the RBI puts its hand in the pockets of the banks and just sucks out the liquidity. So let's say, because repo and reverse repo are indirect, because when the repo is increased, then the banks won't go to RBI, the borrowers won't come to the bank, and therefore the economy will have an effect. So it's an indirect, slow type of an effect. It's a slightly lag effect. But CRR, if it's increased from, let's say, 4 to, let's say, 4.25, or let's say 5 for ease of understanding, the bank which had earlier, 94 rupees available for giving as loans, suddenly now has only 95. So if it's 100 crores, so 95 crores and 94 crores, so 1 crore goes. So RBI just takes money out. So when is CRR used also needs to be understood. If things are being put under control nicely, slowly, that's the time when RBI would resort to repo, reverse repo type of a thing. But even after continuous, now let's pay attention, let's pay close attention for a long, see the repo rate has started moving from here. It's moving up, 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 up. All this while, the CRR has been constant. All this while the CRR has been constant. Suddenly the CRR starts increasing, and then from October 2006 and it goes all the way. So we can very clearly see that RBI is getting into direct action mode. RBI is getting into direct action mode after trying its hand at the repo rate. So CRR is a blunt instrument. CRR hits directly. The money is just taken out. Also while reducing rates. Let's try to understand both the interest rates, whether it's repo, reverse repo, CR, whichever, RBI needs to keep balancing it. So when rates have to be reduced, even then we can see the CRR was reduced drastically in a matter of few days or months maybe, if we were to see the dates. This is August 2008, we are at 9%, and by the time it's Jan 2009, so like half a year, and the interest rates have come down from CRR specifically has come down from 9% to 5%. So RBI, when it wants, it just takes out liquidity from the banks, and once the problem is solved, once the inflation thing is solved, RBI immediately gives back the money to the banks, as can be seen here by way of CRR. So CRR is a direct weapon, cash reserve ratio. RBI uses it to immediately impact, a blunt weapon it's known as, and banks don't earn any interest on that. So that's your CRR. The final term which is there says something known as SLR. SLR stands for statutory liquidity ratio. Statutory liquidity ratio. So that is SLR. Again, the percentages can keep changing. If you pay attention, earlier this was as high as 25% or even 30%. So this has now reduced to 20.75%. So what is SLR, or what is statutory liquidity ratio? This is an important point. When we were doing repo, in repo we had said that the bank has to give government security to the RBI. So government securities are bonds. There will be a separate session on this. So government securities are bonds which the government issues, and when the government issues these bonds, someone has to buy them. So the typical players of the bond market in India are the banks or the insurance companies. It is known as the WDM, or the wholesale debt market segment. So banks have got government securities, and these government securities banks have to buy as a regulation. So if RBI, so let's say if SLR is 20% or 20.25 or whatever, then out of 100 rupees, 20 rupees of your NDTL must be in government bonds. So that is what is SLR. Now whether it should be 30%, whether it should be 15%, again various people have various views about it, but the point is our Indian government runs a fiscal deficit. We borrow 5 lakh crores approximately every year. That 5 lakh crores that government bonds, SLR is requirement of the bank. So SLR buy those bonds. So we give money to the banks as deposits, and that money is then used by way of SLR to fund the government deficit, if we could understand that logic. So these are the broad rates: CRR, repo, reverse repo, MSF, SLR. We have tried to simplify them. If we see, so this is the SLR. This is on this scale. So SLR has been broadly, slowly being reduced. CRR, repo, reverse repo, they keep moving. When the RBI wants to control inflation, rates are increased. When it wants to drastically control inflation, CRR is increased. When the RBI wants growth to take over, the inflation concerns are gone, RBI will reduce interest rates, as we can see here, So RBI will keep moving, and upon the movement of these, can we understand whether we should go into equity markets or whether we should be looking at bond markets, because there's an inverse relation between interest rates and bond price, and even equity markets are affected. So our next videos will be focusing on some of these topics like fiscal policy, government borrowing or interest rates, and so on and so forth. Thank you for watching.